Greetings, everybody. Michelle Black here with Kingdom Travels of the Kingdoms Group. And guess what? Remember, I promised you that we were going to begin our series. That oh goodness, I forgot. The Treasures of Traveling series. Oh my goodness, it's been so long. I forgot. I was getting the wording messed up. The Treasures of Traveling series. Yay! And I am proud and honored to start season 2 with Mr. Vastine East, the son of Africa. Oh yes, God, son of Africa. Well, honey, y'all sit back and you're about to find out what he means as he considers himself a son of Africa. Mr. Vastine East is a very prominent, educated gentleman. Guys, y'all will see it. And most of all, y'all will hear it in his voice. Guys, I could just sit and just listen to his voice. His voice is so mesmerizing. You know how James Earl Jones, we used to love sitting and listening to James Earl Jones speak? This is Mr. Vastine East, okay? And another reason why I have Mr. Vastine East is because he's going to tell y'all about Africa, all right? Kingdom Travels has been getting a lot of requests to go to Africa. And now, as y'all already know, Kingdom Travel is going to educate you first before you start planning to assist you to make that final decision of where you want to go, what you want to do, what to do in Africa, what not to do in Africa, how to prepare for Africa. So you could determine that. So when you contact Kingdom Travel, you already have the information ready, and you make both our jobs easier. Not saying that if you didn't know, it'd be hard on us. We love the challenge because we're going to customize that trip for you to blow your mind. But overall, we want to paint Africa for you. And who better can do this than Mr. Vastine East himself? So I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to mute myself. And I am going to turn the floor over to Mr. Vastine East. Mr. Vastine East, welcome to the Treasures of Traveling series. Thank you so very much for joining me on today. I am honored. Oh, I'm just excited. I got goosebumps just saying that. I am honored to have you here. And sir, the floor is now yours.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you so much, Miss Black. Michelle Black. Treasures of Travel. Wow, that's an awesome name for the name of your travel agency. Most travel agencies that I have encountered, whether going to Africa or whatever, they don't seem to stress the beauty or the uniqueness of travel. They talk about the experience of wildlife or whatever, cultural or whatever. But when you in the word treasure, and there is a treasure in Africa. Africa is consists of 54 countries. There are 54 countries on the continent of Africa, and there are, I think, 6 islands off the coast of Africa, whether it be West Africa or East Africa. Africa is the cradle of civilization, the absolute cradle of civilization. And I think it's incumbent that many of us as African Americans, and I assume that many of your clients are African Americans or all groups, because I tell you what, there's a beautiful thing about Africa. Everyone is going to Africa. And the first time I ever went to New York years ago, I had to make a connection at Kennedy Airport. And I was in my late 20s, early 30s when I did that, when I made that trip. And I saw the calls for flights that were going to Africa. At that time, there were a number of airlines that actually flew, African airlines that flew across the Atlantic to the US. And I was amazed when I saw the number of non Black people that were flying to Africa. It posed a question in my mind, Michelle. How is it that I'm going basically a different place? I know I'm going to a different place, but people that look like me were not going to Africa. in the numbers that I saw that were represented by non-Black people. And from that day, I I went on a quest to understand why. Uh, I think the continent of Africa holds answers for a lot of our questions that we haven't had answered yet. And traveling to, I've been to 5 countries in Africa, and I've been very blessed to go 5 times to the continent. And I don't know how many more trips I'll go, but I know I'm going to take more trips. But I want to ease the fears of a lot of things that people, Hollywood has done us a disservice. Not only Hollywood, but textbooks have all painted pictures of Africa as, and of the things that are so hideous and unpleasant. Well, there's more tropical, there's more jungle in South America and the United States than there is in Africa. More jungle vegetation. And when you talk about the wildlife in Africa, basically people who travel to Africa as tourists see more wild game than the African people themselves. That is a fact. Yes. If when you take your sons and your daughters to whatever country in Africa, they will have seen more wildlife than the people who live there, than the indigenous people. That is a fact.
That's amazing. I guess you could say that's somewhat like here in the United States. We always hear about California. We always hear about New York. We
Hmm.
always hear about certain amusement parks or places to go, but we never visit them. You know, it's just I don't know. I don't know what's something about that, but we never visit them. So it's amazing how in Africa, where you have these animals in vast arrays of land,
Hmm.
the people that actually live there, that ancestors that was born and raised there, they don't even see it. But continue.
Right.
That's just amazing.
Because the amazing thing is the African continent is so large. You're talking, I think, Sudan, one country, you could place the United States, the continental United States, in the country of Sudan. That's how large the continent is. And so, as growing up, and after I was much, of course, I was older when I saw the site in New York City, the people traveling to Africa. But one blessing, Michelle, that probably did more for me was my father had a lot of old buddies that were merchant marines, and they frequented countries in Africa, the coastal countries a lot. So I was exposed to the story of Africa. This was in when I was just a young boy. So the curiosity was just totally just embedded in my mind, the curiosity. But the beauty of traveling to Africa, I think for anyone in this to this day, in this day, I think Africa is as safe as any other place. I mean, there are hot spots in certain countries, of course. There are areas that I wouldn't go here in the United States because of hot spots. But Africa as a whole, it's because when you see the number of people that are there, you see so many Asians that are on African soil. For instance, in Tanzania, I was just there a little over 2 years ago. The influx of the Asians on African soil is so staggering. It's mind blowing. Of course, in North Africa, when I saw Egypt, the influx of so many different groups of people that have conquered that part of Africa, you see the infusion of bloodlines that range anywhere from the Greeks to the Romans to the Arabs to the Europeans. So that's why it's so melodicized. A friend of mine that I worked with years back, he's from Tanzania as well, and he's an engineer. And I just returned from Egypt, and he asked me this question. No, I just returned from Egypt. He says, "Are there any black people in Egypt?" Now, the funny thing about when you land in Cairo, when you end up in Cairo, You see the African blood, even in the fair skinned Egyptians. Unlike when being in the Middle East, if they're dark skinned, you don't really see the African in their blood. But in Egypt, when you talk, when you see the Egyptians that are born there, you see the African in them. And yes, there are black people in Cairo, but when you go south into Aswan, it's like you're in New Orleans. It's like you're in New York City. It's Soul Town. And trust me, there's a beauty there that will envelop you the minute you set foot on African soil.
Which place is the soul town like New Orleans? Which place is that?
Well, this is Aswan. This is one of the cities in Egypt along the Nile River.
Also, it's a city in
Aswan.
Egypt. Aswan. Okay. Now
Hmm.
you do realize some people be thinking that Egypt is by itself. People don't realize that Africa is so big. The famous destinations that we always hear about is all located in Africa.
Yeah, it's so remarkable. The and I didn't go there initially, Michelle, to as for vacations or anything else. I like to think in terms of myself being a son of Africa. I walked backwards into Africa. My first encounter with going into Africa was actually began in Spain. Yes, Spain, Malaga, Spain, on the Mediterranean coast. And from the Spanish coast, you can see Africa in the distance. You can actually see it, the coastline. And that was how I made my journey backwards into Africa because I was so in love with what the Africans did in Spain, the Moors, along with the Arabs, after seeing the first university built in Europe by Africans. But they all came by way of the Rock of Gibraltar from Morocco. There's a 9 mile stretch of open, as an opening between the Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. I wanted to cross that bridge. It's not a bridge, but it is a bridge. And it is one of the most hectic, one of the most dangerous waterways in the world. In that journey, leaving Spain, going into Morocco, you have to go through Great Britain. I say that to a lot of people, and sometimes they have a look like you have. Yes, the Rock of Gibraltar is actually under British control. So you're in Spain, but you take a bus ride and to the Rock of Gibraltar from the city that I was staying in, Malaga, Spain, and you have to walk across a runway to get on another bus, and now you're in Great Britain. Your passport proves it. You have to be stamped by a British agent. And there you take a boat ride across this narrow strip, 9 miles. And that morning, when I made it into Tangier, Morocco, I actually got down on my knees and it was my first encounter with African soil. I actually kissed the concrete and I heard barreling above me with a voice. And I stood up and there was this tall black man. He looked like he was 7 feet tall. He just appeared that tall. And right off the bat, he said, "Welcome home." Because he could tell from my body language, the expression on my face, that I'd never been on African soil before. And that was my beginning, my first encounter with being on African soil. So, uh,
Wow. Wait a minute. You said a runway. So are you talking about a runway where it's just literally from a short distance and then next thing you know you're in Great Britain and they just stamped your
well,
passport in the middle
if
of it?
I'll give you the best example I can, it's like going to an intersection, a big intersection, and
Okay.
the Rock of Gibraltar has an airport. It's a military base. That's what separates
Oh, okay.
Spain from Great Britain. I mean, you're just looking
Oh,
across the runway, but you have to walk across this. It's a narrow, it's safe, but you're walking across a runway where just military jets or commercial airliners just landed or took off. You just simply walk across and you catch another bus and you go several hundred yards to a check-in point, and there you get your passport stamped or visa, whatever. Yeah, but it is, you're
So,
actually on British soil.
so tell us this, Mr. East. If a person that was a solo traveler
Hmm.
or a couple or a family, what part of Africa would you recommend for them to travel to experience the beauty, the history, and the culture of Africa? Which parts of Africa would you recommend for them to travel to?
Okay, I've seen 5 countries on the continent, that being Morocco, Egypt, South Africa, Senegal, and more recently Tanzania. And I must confess that each of these countries are more than welcoming to families. First of all, when you think about Egypt, I think a child that would see Egypt at an early age, his or her life would be transformed. Yes, there are issues there, but you're protected. There are police everywhere. There are armed guards. I never felt afraid anywhere there, never. But there's such a learning experience. Like I said, my travels to Africa has been more of a journey to know and to understand. Next time I go, perhaps I'll go for pleasure. And they trust me, they know how to enjoy life over there. I spent most of my time gleaning and absorbing the spirituality of it. And that's why Africa was always known as the spiritual land. But in Egypt, they would enjoy, families would enjoy, couples, even people traveling solo. Um, South Africa, wonderful country, gorgeous. Um, After getting off the plane in Johannesburg and staying in uh, on a farm that was once owned by one of the leading white soccer players in South Africa before apartheid ended. I felt so honored to be in this environment. There are so many changes that have taken place, for instance, in South Africa since apartheid ended. And Johannesburg, going around and looking at so much wealth has been gleaned. And can you hear me? Yes, can you hear me, Michelle?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm trying to hit the mute button. I thought
Oh,
I was going
okay.
to put myself on mute.
Okay. No, if
Um,
you've got something to say, go right ahead. A question, whatever, please.
oh, no, 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 no. I'm sorry. Guys, please understand when you're doing interviews with COVID, we're doing virtual school learning. So that was my son knocking at the door. So since I
I
had mute
understand.
on, I was talking to him while you still did what you did. So please forgive
Okay.
me, but this is what
Okay.
we
I'll
have to
continue.
do nowadays
I'm
when you're
I'm
doing
rolling now.
interviews.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, sir. So continue, please.
Thank you. Yeah. In South Africa, a young person or family would be so blown away with the history there, and it's so comparable. It can be compared to our struggles here in the United States of America. The only difference, the major difference is that through their struggle, they ended up controlling, hopefully, in the years to come, more of the land, where we did not acquire land acquisitions here in the United States after the Civil War, even though Black families like my family, paternal side, did end up with lots of land, and some of it was done legally, some was illegal. I don't know. There's a history, there's a story. But in but in fact, when I think about my travels there, it was so educational, walking backwards to see where Nelson Mandela, I think a child that perhaps that is studying or he's being bullied back here. But to see what those children endured in South Africa, the young children that lived during this horrible time in South Africa. And then they also would learn from the history of the people there that even in the midst of all of the suffering and the carnage, under the leadership of Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu and other leaders from all walks of life, whether it be coloreds or blacks or whatever, they had a truth and reconciliation period that went on, where the actual nation was allowed to come and beg forgiveness for the wrongs in the past. That's what Africa can do for us. And traveling there, you will learn that people can reconcile. You know, what we saw here on January the 6th is the nation that is still wrestling with the Civil War, where the people in South Africa, their story is telling us that you can come to a point, you'll never be perfect, but you can find a sense of reconciliation. That I learned by being in South Africa. And then leaving Johannesburg and traveling, for instance, and bypassing a lot of countries to make the story short, to Cape Town, South Africa. The beauty there, and people talk about cities. Cape Town reminds me of San Diego, but more beautiful, more gorgeous because of the natural landscaping, people, the energy that exists there. And there's a lot of energy. You sense it from the people. Yes, there's still poverty there, there's still poor, but you don't go from being oppressed people and become multimillionaires overnight. That won't happen. It has never happened anywhere. Senegal, another country. Senegal, West Africa, is a little different. It's it's not as developed as, say, for instance, maybe Nigeria or Ghana. I haven't gone to Ghana or Nigeria, but one day I will go to Nigeria and Ghana. And just as a note, Nigeria is, I think it's the most populated country in Africa. If it's not, it may be overshadowed by Kenya, but Nigeria, I think it has 209 plus million people. 209 plus million people. And South Africa boasts a number of only a little less than 60 million, the population in South Africa. And but Senegal is a little bit more. Senegal is a gorgeous country. It has great architecture in its cities, but it's on the rise. It's moving up. It's moving up. And these countries, and what invites you there is that you come to understand that the plight of Africa after what is known as the First World War, their condition was ordained by treaty. There's an article in the Treaty at Versailles that actually spells out that those from the African continent, those from West Africa, because of their advancement based on a Eurocentric point of view, it actually said that we, the Africans, would need more tutelage, meaning that we were not as intelligent as, say, our brothers in the Middle East, brothers in parts of Asia, but the African countries and those countries in the Pacific Rim countries, the islands, would require more tutelage. And in doing that, it relegated us to becoming nothing but servants. And oftentimes we hear many of our brothers from Africa, they talk about the natural resources, and you see it, and for instance, in Johannesburg. And there's a story about the streets in Johannesburg. There was so much gold extracted from underneath the earth under the city of Johannesburg. And when you extract, you take it's dirt. And there are mounds and hills all around the city of Johannesburg. Beautiful hills now. Grass is growing on the hills. And they use that same dirt to make roads around Johannesburg. There's an old saying there that the streets are paved with gold in Johannesburg. Why? It's because there's fragments of gold in the dirt. That's how much wealth is there. But I made reference to many of our brothers, they speak about the wealth that exists there. But this treaty at Versailles, and after reading part of it and most of it when I was in high school, I knew I had to set foot there. I had to see it for myself. This treaty relegated us to become nothing but servants. Yes, you can have all the gold and all the diamonds in the world, but if you're not manufacturing anything, you've got nothing. Because you take the minerals and the various ores and everything from the continent, you take it to the Western world and you purify it, you turn it into something, and the African has to buy it. So he's buying his own natural resources by someone else. And I may be getting too far off the point, but I get carried away with this thing. And the wildlife. What about the wildlife in Africa? I was blessed to go on two safaris in two different countries, South Africa and Tanzania. And there were times I was within 8 or 9 feet of lions on the back of rovers, Range Rovers. Elephants would walk right by, and out in the forest. Yes.
Wait a minute. Let me interject. You was 8 to 9 feet from lions.
Oh yes. Hmm.
Okay, so me and my son, I just helped my kindergarten son. They have him now doing projects, and he
Hmm.
wanted to write about lions because of the fact that you said you was 8 to 9 feet from lions. Do you know that lions can jump up to 40 feet, and you was that close to a lion?
Oh yeah. It's amazing when you go on when you go on a safari. You learn so much about nature. You learn so much about how we have been so mesmerized by Hollywood, has painted such a, and these animals are wild. They've just become accustomed to people with their cameras flicking, and they'll tell you when you're on the back of these Range Rovers, when you go on a safari ride, a camera safari. The big thing you don't do is you don't do anything to distract the animals, like standing up abruptly, making unusual noises, because the animal, he's wild. Because the thing about the animals is that it's fight or flight, fight or. So this tent behind me, you see, yes, I spent several nights, nearly a week in that tent, every night, and outside during the night, I could hear animals grubbing around and pulling vegetation off the ground, and the hyenas are all over the place at night, and zebras. And the amazing thing about, I wanted to share this, the African night. There is something so calming, so it takes you to a point where you say, this must be where creation had to take place. It is absolutely quiet. Unlike the movies, you hear animals making noises. You don't hear that at night. Occasionally, you might hear a lion in the distance, and they don't roar, they grunt. It is the grunt that is so majestic. And yes, there's another thing that says Africa is not for the weak of heart. And it's not, because, there are butterflies there that could actually kill you. But don't be afraid of the
Butterflies.
nature. Yeah, there's
Wait
certain,
a minute.
because,
Butterflies.
yeah, there are certain butterflies or even grasshoppers that could be deadly. But you don't think,
Wow.
you
I didn't
don't
know
think
that.
about.
I didn't know that. Oh my god. Okay, let me shut up. Keep going. Keep going.
And but no, the wildlife is what it is. But you as a tourist will probably see more wildlife in your days and weeks there than the people who live there. So that's something to take back home to the US. Something to take back to the Caribbean, wherever you live. But the story that I want to just share with you, story about a man that I think was probably one of the greatest travel agents in Africa than ever. And his name was Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey, who was born in Jamaica. Marcus Garvey, who became a successful businessman, who had the idea that former slaves should take refuge in Africa and build empires again. This man never set foot on African soil. He died in a hospital bed in London. Marcus Garvey. After being in Ocho Rios once, and I looked up and I saw the beauty of this island, the majestic, the Dunn's waterfall. I said, how could he leave this place?
Where was that
But
place again?
this is Dunn's waterfall in Ocho Rios, Jamaica. This is where Marcus Garvey was from. He was Jamaican.
Okay.
And I think
Okay.
it was Bart Marley's wife that coined it best when she said, what man trades a continent for an island? And that is a stirring image. And all Marcus Garvey was trying to do was to inspire us. And we can do these things now. We have the power to get on jet planes, these great time machines, and travel there. And you will be embraced. You will learn more about yourself. You'll see someone walking the streets that'll look like your great grandmother. You'll hear someone speak, or they'll ask you a question. They will call you brother and sister. You will know that you have set foot where your DNA has been begging you to go back to. At least see it for yourself, experience it for yourself. Spend your money the way you want to spend it, but for the price of a car that's going to depreciate, you can have a memory of Africa through this travel agency, through Michelle Black, that will last until the day you die. Long after your car is now at a junk pile turned into Coke cans, you can actually enjoy and learn the beauty of who you are. And as I said earlier, many people go there who don't look like us, but they have a reason for going there. They know the beauty of going there. We should seek the beauty and the wealth that exists there, not just the material things, but the spirit, the soul. Enjoy it. And trust me, you'll enjoy it. You'll bless the day that you set foot there. You've got 54 countries. You've got 54 countries. It's like going in the Galleria. You don't have to buy the first pair of shoes you see. And I'm sure that Michelle can hook you up with the right country. And as far as the shots and all the inoculations, the countries where you have to take the most shots are the countries that are basically less wealthy. And it's only good. And the shots last you for years. So you're good to go in 4 or 5 years again when you want to travel. So it's just a necessary precaution. And most of these shots that I had to take were very inexpensive, easy to get. You just have to make sure you get the shots at the right time. And Africa, most nights are very cool. And even most of the countries, even desert countries, are very cool at night. So you're not in intense heat all the time, even though it's very hot in certain countries during the day. But take that plunge, take that journey. You don't have to go backwards like me. Go forward and find yourself, because there are things that are happening in the world that are trying to disfigure and change the face of that lovely continent we call Africa, we call home. I saw a picture of the continent of Africa. And I'm not here to invoke or do anything to cause anyone a disrupt mind, but I didn't feel comfortable when I saw not Africa, but China name on the continent of Africa. So, to our young children, this is your chance. You want to do something great, use your technologies, your talents, because you're needed there and you're wanted there. You have a chance. This is your moment in the sun. Michelle, I hope that I have said something that is of importance today. Um,
You have said a whole lot, Mr. East. You've educated me, and I thought I knew just a little bit of Africa. So you have added on to my education about Africa. There's one more thing I want you to address, and we're going to be bringing it to a close. One thing that when I do set up international custom travel itineraries,
Mm-hmm.
Kingdom Travels give the cultural do's and don'ts. Like a certain country, you don't look them straight in the eye. Another country, if they give you a gift, you have to receive it with open hands. And if you don't receive it like that, it's like an insult to them. So for Africa, is the culture of the I know it's not the same all around, but can you give some of the general do's and don'ts when you do travel to Africa? And you gave us the do's and don'ts when we go on the safaris. We just know to sit our bus there, be quiet, take a picture, and scream on the inside.
Most people that will travel to these countries or the countries that I've visited, basically what you encounter as when it comes to the cultural norms where people might be offended, you may not encounter that if you're traveling to the major cities in any of these countries, because these countries, the cities are virtually Eurocentric, even though they have their native languages. But if the country was once colonized by the French, you will find French culture. The British culture, Portuguese, Belgian, or whatever. But the whatever country you're going to visit, we are blessed to have the internet, and all you have to do is Google customs of Namibia, and you'll have it right there. It's at your fingertips. So you can become well dressed wherever you're going by simply using the power of Google and simply Google customs of whatever country you're going to. If you want to know if it's okay to hold your wife's hand in public, Google it. And it's so easy. We have it all at our fingertips. This is a new day, a new time. Yes.
That is true. So the countries you discussed today that is memorable to visit, and I'm glad you said that when you was comparing, buying a new car to invest it in a lifetime. They always say memories are priceless. I mean, when I was growing up and I would listen to the older saints, and one thing that they treasured the most was those memories of things that happened, and they were still talking about it till the day they died. And it seemed like every time they said those stories, something new was added. Because in your mind, you're going through about what they're about to say, and then they may say something, you be like, wait a minute, you didn't say that before. So yes, memories are priceless. I know for me, to go on a safari, I'll be just sitting there like, oh, and I'll remember, seeing a giraffe or seeing the elephants and seeing a lion. Yes, I'm going to finally get to the lion and the cheetah and the tiger, just seeing those. And I'm be like, I saw that. I was near it. So thank you so very much. So South Africa, Johannesburg, Tanzania.
Well, I'll give you the countries.
Yes. Okay.
That I've gone. I visited Egypt, South Africa, Senegal.
Okay.
I visited Morocco, and more recently, Tanzania. In South Africa, I visited the city of Johannesburg, which is and of course Cape Town. In Tanzania, I went to Arusha, Dar es Salaam, and several other cities that are around the various areas. But the countries itself, and you can educate yourself greatly with Google and familiarize yourself with the things you're going to encounter. But I promise you, you will see things as a guest, as one of the children from diaspora, and that's the term I like to use, diaspora, meaning that we are dispersed, those of us that are outside of the African continent. And I feel that I have somehow gone. I didn't go back to the door in East West Africa, the door of no return, but I took part of my DNA, my ancestors. They set foot back on African soil. And they may be looking at it from the spiritual world. I don't know. They may be saying, boy, you spent your money for nothing. I'm already here. But the fact is, out of respect for my ancestors, I took a part of them back through me. And you can do the same thing. And you owe it to them. You owe it.
Well, Mr. East, I thank you so very much. Now, I don't know if you just gave your final words, but I would like for you to close with final words of the importance of not just going to Africa as a vacation, but as you said, just to see where we came from, the many lines of heritage, just to see where we came from. So, final words on you, sir.
Yes. My final words, following the leadership of Marcus Garvey. Sometimes suffering is necessary. What we have contributed here in the Western world, our bloodline came from Africa. The light bulb, refrigerated cars, the scientific achievements. Would these things have occurred if we had not been slaves here? So we're taking back, we're giving back to our mother as sons and daughters of Africa. We had to take the long way around, but we can help the continent of Africa reemerge and become what she once was and even what she was never. That's the power of travel. And we're thankful to have this wonderful travel agency through Michelle Black. I called her one of the daughters of Marcus Garvey. Her company will take you home. And that's my story. And I'm sticking to it.
Everybody, let's give Mr. Vastine East a wonderful applause. Oh my goodness, thank you so very much. I think this is a great way to start season 2 of the Treasures of Traveling, and you have definitely provided us the treasures of Africa and how it's worth the investment in just traveling back to Africa and seeing the treasures that are still there and even the hidden treasures. Because we know there's some hidden treasures out there, but it takes us to step out and go find it or just, come across it. So thank you so very much, Mr. Vastine East, for starting season 2 of the Treasures of Traveling. And we're glad to have introduced Africa to everyone. So everyone, we shall conclude this interview. And if you're ready to start planning your next Africa journey to go discover some of those treasures of Africa that Mr. Vastine East stated that was there, feel free to contact us at 346-917-0048 extension 1. Visit us at www.travelwithkingdom.com. And last but not least, if you would like to email us, you can email us at info@kas-llc.com. Be blessed, everybody. Know that Kingdom Travels is here, prepared, and ready to serve you. Thank you again, Mr. Vastine East. Till we meet again, everybody. Take care.
Thank you, Michelle.